Greetings, truth seekers. Paranormal M is your destination for all things mysterious. Get ready to question everything as we dive into the realms of the supernatural. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on our latest mind-boggling discoveries. Let's unravel the truth together. The Ghost Train. Here was my first encounter with something paranormal when I was young. I never really realized it until years later, when I was, really don't remember my age, I think around maybe 7 years old. I used to live in an old house, and this house used to be on the property of an old railroad station, where a train ran through it. People lived there and either fixed the train or worked for stations. Well, one night when I was a kid, I wanted to sleep on the couch, as all kids love sleeping on couches. It was around winter time frame, and I don't know how many people really knows of the old Ashley metal heaters. The wood heater types where you'd put logs and woods in. But we had to get it going all night long. One night while I was sleeping on the couch, I woke up to the sound of a heater metal creaking. Because of the time I didn't know about the expansion and the contracting of metal, it would sort of make a noise, and I'd look over there. When I'd look over there, I saw this train exit from the center of the wood heater. The train was about 4 feet tall. It was an old steam engine with the engine, a cold cart, and a few other carts behind it in tow. As the kid, I got scared. I got up from the couch and, hiding underneath my blanket, and I hid behind another smaller gas heater that we had on the other side of the room until the train disappeared. The train went halfway through the house, and I could hear the steam coming out of the engine, and then the metal wheels on the track sound. And then it's randomly disappeared in the middle of the room, about 15 feet, maybe 20 feet away from the wood heater that we had. Once it disappeared, I left the other, just, protection, and I went back to bed. It took me about 30 minutes to go back to sleep. The woman voice the first time. Okay guys, here's the second time something crazy's ever happened to me spiritually, or however you may call it, with the paranormal world. I used to be a contractor for the military launching Super Hornets for the Navy. I was in El Centro, and if anybody's been to El Centro, California, you all know that it's about 110, maybe 15 degrees during the summertime. Well, during this time frame, I was waiting for my pilot to show up in my aircraft, so I could be able to get him ready for lunch, and fell asleep standing up. Well, I didn't realize that I fell asleep because with the next heat, it really puts a toll on your body, and you can fall asleep without realizing it. But while I was asleep, I heard a woman's voice telling me to wake up, that I needed to wake up. And this woke me up for sure. I looked around and nobody was around me. I was all by myself, and as I looked around to see who that was, I could see my pilot walking toward my aircraft, and he was only about 100 feet away. For those of you not in the military or prior military, if you get caught sleeping on an aircraft waiting for your pilot, you could get in a lot of trouble or fired if you're civilian, because you're not supposed to be sleeping on a job, especially working in the aviation field. So whether this was a guardian, an angel, or spirit, it helped save my job. But this is not the only time I've heard her voice. Ask Reddit. Basically, we used to think our house was haunted. Not because of anything overtly spooky, but simply because strange things would happen. Things would vanish and reappear in odd places a little while later. Doors would shut themselves, nothing really ghostly. It was more of a family joke. An old woman was killed by her son in the house. She died in the hospital, but he pushed her down the stairs. And the old lady was bored. Anyway, it all kind of climaxed one night. The old lady ghost took it to the next level. It was about 3 a.m. and there was a huge crash in our kitchen. Naturally, my parents woke me up just thinking that we were being burgled, and my dad ran downstairs. What he found was an incredibly strange scene. so he called me and my mom downstairs to have a look. There were no signs of entry, no smashed windows, doors still locked, and obviously nobody in the house. But in the middle of our kitchen floor was a drawer. Not an artist, not an artist, but a thing you put stuff in. A drawer. Ha. It was standing on its side with all the utensils that were kept in it neatly positioned around it in a circle. Our dog was also backed into the corner, trembling and whimpering. We kept him in the kitchen at night. We never really understood what happened there, just put it down to the old lady making her exit. Stuff stopped disappearing after that, and doors no longer randomly slammed, except of course for natural reasons. Ask Reddit. About 2 years ago I had a dream which I went to London with 3 friends. I hadn't spoken to them in a few years. You don't need the details, but basically I was in London with my friends and they asked where Lisa was. I told them I didn't know that Lisa was coming and wasn't sure where she would be. I hadn't spoken to Lisa in years either. Anyway, I wake up and I can remember this dream, which is strange, as back then I could never even remember my dreams. I'd also woken up a few hours earlier than normal, so I was a little confused. For some reason I had the instinct to go on Facebook, which isn't that irregular as I spend too much time on there anyway. Anyhow, I log in and have a new notification. 4 hours ago while I was asleep, Lisa posted on my wall, "Were you in London today?" Holy shit, I crap myself. To this day I still have, no decent explanation for it. Commented on the post, know why. She never replied. About 3 to 4 months later, I saw her in a bar with friends from the dream. We're good friends with her, so this isn't strange. I asked Lisa about it, and so she said she saw somebody who looked like me. I refused to believe this going down to pure coincidence, though. TL:DR. I had a dream in a different city with somebody I never speak to, and at the same time they asked me if I was in that city. Also, I want to note that I couldn't have sleepwalked and read the post. It came up with a notification, meaning I hadn't already seen it. Ask Reddit. When I was about 7 to 9, which is 2007 to 2009, I lived with my family in North Carolina. My grandmother on my dad's side of the family lived not far away in Virginia Beach. One summer we drove down to visit her for a week and came back home relatively late at night. My brother and I go into our shared bedroom at the time, set our bags down and get ready to go to bed. We had gotten into my parents' bedroom for one reason or another, and my mom and dad were checking on the voicemails of the landline phone. My mom's always been very adamant about having a landline in the house. As my mom was flipping through the voicemails, she came across this one that was what sounded like a child's voice singing in Spanish. My mother's native language is Spanish, and her side of the family's Cuban, so she was able to translate it. The translation was roughly along the lines of, "I hope you die in suffering." There's no callback number, and my mom was never able to find out who left the message, whose voice it was, or what it meant. Something about the whole thing absolutely terrified me, and I had a hard time sleeping that night. I recently visited my parents' house, not the same one, not the same state. It was last month for a few days before heading back home after a work trip. Brought it up with my mom to see if she remembered as well as I do. She said that she quote-unquote vaguely remembers it. Still one of the creepiest memories and freaks me out to this day. Ask Reddit. I've also struggled to believe in ghosts and paranormal, but I have had some weird experiences I can't explain. I used to work in an old pub and hotel in rural hills in England, and everybody used to joke about a ghost who existed there. I used to laugh it off and cringe when people spoke about it. The cleaning lady was a bit crazy and used to blame things on the ghost. such as a cleaning bottle falling off the shelf in the kitchen and spilling all over the floor. Or she used to say the ghost would tie socks around the light fixtures in the B&B rooms. Anyway, one day I was just hoovering the bar and lounge area around 9 a.m. and it's closed, and everybody left the hotel to check out. It was like 8:30, and there were usually walkers who get the shuttle bus up to the hill to start the day's walk. So at this time, only the owner and his wife were upstairs where they lived. Turned the vacuum off, because I thought I heard somebody toward the back door. Expecting one of them, that's when the vacuum went off, and I heard clear as day some women talking, saying something about playing every Tuesday. No one was there, and the owners were still upstairs. All doors were locked, checked down the corridor, and nothing. The second time, me and the crazy cleaner was stood joking about the ghost, and I said, I don't believe in ghosts. Our minds play tricks on us. Literally a second after I said that, the vacuum cleaner about 5 feet away turned itself on. Ask Reddit. When I first started dating my now wife, I stayed at her house for several days. The first night I was there, I got a really unsettling feeling from the laundry room, like it was something that didn't want me to go in there. Told my wife about it, and she freaked out. She had the same feeling and didn't want to say anything, so I wouldn't freak out too. And to see if I also felt it. Her house was extremely haunted. There was stuff that constantly moved in her kitchen. We were home alone, and several times throughout the day we would hear something loud fall or move, but when we would check it out, nothing had moved. A couple months after we moved into our new place, I saw an old man in our bedroom, but I was completely convinced that he was always there, and I was asking him a question. My wife walked in and asked who I was talking to, and matter-of-factly told her I was talking to her roommate. She got extremely concerned because nobody was there. We've also seen a white dog in the bedroom. We also have 2 spots that our cats will stare at without moving. If we call out to them, they don't budge and won't freak out if we touch them. There's nothing in those spots, no bugs, lights, or items or objects. My wife and I have this odd ability to know when someone's close to us if they're severely injured or about to die. We begin to think about someone and get very sad and depressed. We would try to contact them to discover that something had happened. She had the feeling hours before she received a call about her brother passing, and I didn't. I had the feeling about a day before I received a call about my brother passing, but she didn't. Her and I both got the feeling when her mom passed. I got the feeling the same night my cousin tried to end his life, or her life. Fortunately, she's okay. Good. When I was younger, I frequently would have premonitions and visions play out in my dreams about things that hadn't happened yet. On many occasions, I would know what would happen days in advance and use the knowledge to my advantage. Like I'd have a dream about a pop quiz and know what the questions were, so I would study those sections, and a day or two when it would happen, I'd have the answers. This continued on while I was working, and I could predict what my boss wanted me to do. Did many odd tasks that nobody else did. When he would come by and ask me what to do, I would give him the information. Started to get very weirded out and began to just complete other people's sentences as a test, and for about 3 years I was on point every time, even if I never met the person before. Weirdest thing is that about 9 months ago I stopped having any of these experiences and became extremely ill. Since then I've not been able to sleep properly and I've become frail. Ask Reddit. Starting at the age of 17, I started seeing shadow people in my house. They were tall black shadows with what looked like a 19th century top hat. They would disappear as soon as you tried to look directly at them. When I was 18, I was like at a keg party and lost track of time. I had a midnight curfew. This way I wouldn't sneak home late. My parents never gave me a key to the house. They always stayed up until I got home. So I pull into the garage at 3 a.m., go to the back door next to the solarium, as I usually do, lights off, doors unlocked. Walk around the back of the house to the other back door and the back porch. it's locked as well. Then I hear my mom's voice from the front of the house simply saying, "Come in the front door." When I get to the front door, it's open and my mom's presumably gone back to bed, so I go to my room and go to bed myself. The next morning, Mom asked me what time did I get home. I lied and I said I left my watch here and I'm not really sure. She then said that after the 10 o'clock news, they had gotten so sleepy that they had fallen asleep, thinking I would wake them when I got home. She then asks how I kind of got in last night, and I said they must have left the door unlocked. What made them so sleepy? What told me to enter the front door? What unlocked and opened the front door? I don't know, kept me from getting grounded. Had I gotten grounded, I wouldn't have been able to meet the girl I would get pregnant and marry the next weekend and spend 25 years with. I came back around 4 months before I caught her cheating and stayed around until after the divorce was finalized and I was back on my feet. Ask Reddit. One of my old family friends always maintained her house. Well, she maintained that it was haunted. And on various occasions, her and several members of her family and friends witnessed something strange or otherworldly that had no rational explanation. They were actually talking about this not too long ago, so I'll bullet point a few things I remember her telling me. Friend's mother was outside hanging out washing and claimed that she saw her dead grandmother smiling at her through the gap in the sheets. Friend would often hear loud conversations late at night and thinking of the TV. She would go into the lounge to tell whoever was watching it to turn it down to find the lounge dark and empty with the TV off. Friend had a few mates over for a sleepover, and one mate needed the toilet during the night, and she claimed she saw a dark, shadowy figure standing in the hall. She'd wake my friend up to escort her to the bathroom. She was so freaked out. Friend's sister claimed to see a woman standing behind her in the mirror that apparently matched the appearance of her great-grandmother. Same grandmother her mothers also saw. My friend would sometimes hear really fast running footsteps outside her bedroom when she was home alone. Sometimes their old landline would ring randomly and it'd just be loud static on the other end, and when they would call her ID the number, it would say it from their own number. Ask Reddit. I lived in an apartment that my two roommates swore was haunted. A landlady lived in the unit below us, but at one time lived in our apartment and confirmed that both she and everybody who'd ever occupied our apartment had had some paranormal experience at some point or another. I thought that was bullshit. One day I come home and my roommate Gwen comes out of her room with tears in her eyes and a quiver in her voice. She asks me if I've been in her bedroom. I tell her truthfully that no, I hadn't, and asked her what was wrong, and she explains. When I was leaving for work today, I was running late and grabbed my purse in a hurry and knocked a bunch of photos off my desk. I didn't have time to clean it up, so I said, fuck it, I can do it when I get home, and I left for work. When I got home, all the photos were back on my desk, and I asked, and my other roommate. He says it wasn't him. I asked her why that upset her so much, and she said it was because one of the photos was of her maternal grandmother who had passed away a week earlier. Normally that picture was toward the back of her desk, and when she got home she found it front and center. Figured she'd actually cleaned the pictures up in a rush and just forgot that she did it. She was super spooked. Then about a week later I was home sitting in our living room looking over some paperwork for my job. Out of the corner of my eye, I see my roommate Jimmy walk out of his room and through the living room down the hallway that leads to the bathroom, kitchen, and Gwen's bedroom. After a while, I started to feel uneasy for some reason. I looked up and realized that though Jimmy had gone down the hallway some minutes earlier, there was no noise, no lights were on. Everything was quiet. So I get up, walk to the end of the hall, and just stand there for a second, looking down the black hallway into the dark kitchen. Call his name, get no answer, so I step into the bathroom, turn on the light, and there's no one there. I walk down the hallway further and call his name once more. Nothing. Finally make it to the kitchen, turn the light on, and sure enough, there's nobody there either. Finally, I text both roommates to see if they were home, and about 15 minutes later, Gwen texts me to tell her that she's home in the burbs, and about 2 hours later, Jimmy texts me that he just finished up a double at his restaurant. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I saw a person walk through my apartment, but I was alone. Ask Reddit. I posted something similar, but I didn't want to go into depth, so I'll do that here. When I was still living with my grandparents, or like a incident where I was unable to sleep in my regular bedroom downstairs, so I was moved upstairs into a spare bedroom. The way this room is situated makes it possible to see the other side of the house. So I go to bed that night and leave the door open. Bad idea, I know. But I fall asleep. Later that night, probably around 3 a.m., I wake up needing to use the washroom. Go out, quickly do my business, head back to my room. At this point, I'm awake. The light in the bathroom had woken me up a bit, and I'm sitting in the dark room trying to fall asleep. At the time, I was pretty young, so I wasn't quite over the whole scared of the dark thing, and I was having trouble closing my eyes comfortably. While I'm laying there, I happen to look out the door and toward the stairs leading to the basement. Suddenly, I notice a white figure standing at the top holding some sort of object. It was obviously a woman, as she was wearing a dress and had sort of put her hair up in her bun. I watched for a moment as she slowly descended the stairs before throwing the covers over my head and hiding from whatever it was. I lived in that house for about a year longer and never saw her again. However, my grandparents still live in the house. When I go and visit, I often feel like I'm not alone or I hear noises that don't belong there. Ask Reddit. When I was growing up, our house had strange things happen all the time. My whole family had always had weird connections to the paranormal things. So for me, it was normal to experience things from time to time. However, when I was about 16, though, things took a dark turn. My mom got really sick, like had to have surgery and stay in the hospital twice sick. Came completely out of nowhere. She'd been very healthy until this happened. Started hearing voices that we couldn't really understand. It was like mumbling in the background, but always very ominous. Then it started mimicking my family. My mom would hear me come in and tell her it was time to wake up from a nap while I was actually sitting on the couch, or I'd hear her come into the kitchen and sigh while she was actually asleep. The worst part was that I couldn't sleep. Every time I started to doze off, I would see in my mind a black figure standing in the doorway watching me. It always felt like it was waiting for something. I started getting really freaked out by it, so one night I was sitting on my bed and I decided I'd pray about what it was that was going on. My bed was the kind that had a frame and a wooden slat that went through across holding the mattress. So I'm sitting there praying, asking God to protect me. I remember thinking, keep this away from me, whether it's a dark spirit or a demon, if demons are even real. And it's like this thing heard me questioning if it was real, because as soon as I thought that something hit my bed, hit it so hard one of the slats fell out and the foot of my mattress hit the floor. I know the slat didn't just slip because I felt it hit the bed and the whole mattress shake. I was out of that room so fast and we moved not long after. Dream/sleep paralysis. I just now have woken up from this experience that happened at around 12:30, 1:50-ish. Cannot tell which part of this was in my dream and what part was real life, as I woke up and fell back asleep numerous times. It started with me hearing this kind of whistle almost, and it was very faint. I'm sick, so I figured maybe it was my nose making strange noises. But just in case, I held my breath, and sure enough, the whistle was heard. The whistle was heard. Sorry guys, I'm super tired. Remembering that in the Appalachians this means a dangerous entity is close by, I start to feel somewhat terrified. Then for what felt like an hour continued to hear it, and sort of while dreaming. I'm not really sure if I was dreaming at this point because it felt very real, but I heard it before falling asleep when I was fully aware. Then I started to feel like I was being observed, and the sensation was very strong. At one point, I felt I should stop breathing for a second in fear something was spotted me. Then I feel a deep pressure on my right shoulder like something's grabbing it from behind, and I feel terrified at this point. By the way, I don't think it can be sleep paralysis, as I could move freely, but was too terrified to do so. When it goes away, I get up and try to walk out of my room, where I'm suddenly back in my bed. I still feel terrified at this point, and I feel as though I'm in danger. The rest of this last leg is somewhat blurry, so the validity may be questionable. I think I remember seeing a shadow or two moving along my wall, just kind of moving and being present after asking God for a guardian angel, so I'm completely scared and full of adrenaline. After this, I fully wake up and whisper for my dog, but no response. Got up after grabbing my now unplugged phone and getting from outside my room, and when I come back, I feel an incredible chill almost go through me, which lasted 5 seconds. Can't sleep, my eyes burn with exhaustion. Potentially useful information. I have an armored cross right above my wardrobe. The shadows I recall were also moving about underneath said cross. I have no idea what the hell happened or whether or not the entity that did that was actually dangerous. Strange lamp flicker. I, 42-year-old male, recently broke up with my girlfriend. The situation with her had been building over the past month and a half. Everything was in limbo and I didn't know what to think about any of it. Things were getting increasingly frustrating and confusing every day up until it all ended. A few days before I decided to take action and end the relationship, I was sitting on my couch watching TV. That's not a good start. It was a Friday night and I was just relaxing. I wasn't really focused on the television because my thoughts were distracted by the situation with my girlfriend, and I know how I would process the situation going forward. I have a lamp that stands off to the side of my couch. A little further past the lamp is a picture of my grandfather hanging on the wall. I was practically raised by my grandfather. He was an old-school, no-bullshit Italian who was the patriarch of the family. He protected me and my whole family, and we were as close as any two people could possibly be. When he first died about 14 years ago, I had a paranormal experience involving him. So I always knew he was watching over me and was aware of everything that was happening. So I'm sitting there on the couch, the lamp flickers off for about a second, and then comes right back on. Initially figuring something happened with the power, but the television was unaffected. Walked over to the lamp and messed with it for several minutes, tapping the bulb and unplugged it and plugged it back in, etc. Couldn't get it to flicker regardless of anything I did. But the lamp had never done that before. For some reason I looked to the wall and noticed my grandfather's picture. I knew it was a message of some sort. It turns out that a couple of days after this happened, I came to find some information about my girlfriend that resulted in me packing her stuff and getting her out of my life. It's what needed to be done, and I know that lamp flicker was a sign that I wasn't alone in that moment, and that a conclusion to the situation was just around the corner. Toddler sensed his grandma getting hurt. Thought I should share this one, as it's pretty much the only indisputable paranormal thing that's happened to me. And this thing happened about 10 years ago. I still remember that day in great detail. I was outside with my 2-year-old son walking the dog. We were pretty close to our apartment and my son was running on the grass. All of a sudden he stopped and looked at me. "Anna fell," he said. I looked at him and he told me, "No, sweetie, Grandma didn't fall, she's fine." I hadn't talked to my mom that day, so she lived about 6 miles from us and I had no reason to believe anything had happened to her. He was persistent and told me that she indeed had fallen and kept telling me that he was mistaken and shouldn't worry. Or I kept telling him. He went inside and didn't talk more about it until my mom called with a couple hours later telling me that she had been out in the woods that day and had taken a pretty bad fall. But as you might imagine, I got chills down my spine. How did he know? And something else weird happened with my other son a few years later as I left him at daycare. He was asking about his mom, and I told him, "What? I'm your mom." After which he responded, "No, my other family, my other mom. They all disappears in the rain." That spooked me a bit too, even though it of course could be easily explained simply by the imagination or a dream of a 3-year-old. Ghost of a Buffalo Soldier on Fort Sill. I had been working civil service at Fort Sill since maybe 1999, almost 25 years. But I've never seen anything like this before. I'm a smoker, so when I take smoke breaks, I have to walk across the street to a small park. It's a vacant lot with a few trees. Last Thursday, I had gone out for a smoke break at around 10 a.m. I was having my cigarette and looking at the news on my phone. I noticed in my peripheral vision to my right a black man in a cowboy hat walking through the field. I see people walking across that field occasionally, so at first I don't think much of it. However, I looked up and noticed that his corporal stripes were upside down and much larger than on modern uniforms. He was about my height, 5'8", and had a light beard as if he had kind of really shaved in a week or so. Then it occurred to me that he was dressed in a Civil War-style uniform and thought, "Oh cool, it's Civil War reenactor. Maybe they have some sort of historical reenactment nearby." So I immediately thought to take the photo of the man. I switched my phone to camera mode and went to take the photo, but the man had completely vanished. Mind you, he was 50 or so feet away from me at least. And it was a wide open field that we were in, so there's absolutely no way that he could have run out of sight that quickly. Puzzled me all day. I was trying to justify in my mind what I'd seen. I couldn't. Never been much of a believer in the paranormal, but I have no other explanation other than I believe I saw a full-bodied apparition in like a buffalo soldier. Broad daylight. Even though it was overcast that day, he looked like a real solid person, not translucent or see-through like you see in movies. Did some research and discovered that buffalo soldiers, black soldiers that served in the late 1860s up until about World War II, had built the original building at Fort Sill in 1869 to 1870, such as the old post quadrangle, officers' quarters, the original hospital, and livery stables. Some of these soldiers are buried in Fort Sill Post Cemetery. The spirit of my dad. First, a disclaimer. I don't know what to believe. I don't think so. I'm quite scientific on these matters. Low tolerance for bullshit, so to speak. I think we're just biological machines, and it's a comfortable thought to have a caring deity or spirits or even guardian angels. Those who are comfortable thoughts. I get it. I do the same. Maybe spiritually, might be real, but I still lean to a no. I lean to a no to the biological machines. So at the same time, I'm a hypocrite, which is this story I'm about to tell. To me, it's real, and that's how I will remember it. Dad died 20 years ago or so. We were all in the hospital, just silent, looking at his body getting colder and stiffer by the minute. Nobody said anything. Everything went back home, and everybody waited for the elevator and entered it, and the door closed, but suddenly opened again. My mom and we were looking at each other. We knew that that was Dad. Not a doubt in our hearts. We knew it. We walked home through the park. In the park, I could still feel him. He was walking with us, that's it. That's the story, my paranormal story. I don't care what it is, real or imagination, it was a meaningful moment for me. That's all that matters. Did I meet a dark witch? Back when I was about 7 years old, I was taking a walk through the woods with my parents. If I remember correctly, we came across a diner or a restaurant of some sort. Can't really tell why, but I recall that I was walking ahead and just exploring the forest surrounding the restaurant a bit. All of a sudden I realized that a few feet away there was an elderly-looking woman standing next to a path that would lead deeper into the woods. She was wearing a black cloak with a hood on her head, holding a walking stick in one of her hands. Somehow I felt drawn to her and was slowly approaching her. I would even go as far as to say that she was actually waving her hand at me and luring me in, so to speak. The woman was very tranquil and didn't speak too much, but she wanted to give me something out of the bag that she was carrying with her. As soon as I reached out my hand, my parents did just kind of catch me up and they were yelling at me to stay away. It felt like I was pulled out of a dream or trance-like state when I heard my mother's voice. I turned to my parents, turned back to the elderly woman who was smiling and now slowly making her way into the forest, and turned back to my parents again. For one last time I was trying to catch a glimpse of the woman, but to my surprise she was gone, as she had vanished completely or ran into the woods, pedal to the metal. Of course, I was young and could be kind of reading way too much into it, but did anybody experience something similar before? My mother said something about dark witches and that woman could have been one, but I'm not sure if she could really explain that to me. I detected a magnetic anomaly in my room 3 feet away from me. It was in my room in my town. In the house we have this quite old. We did do renovations to it back in 2010, but that's it. Now I was in my room, which has always been a bit scary to all. I was alone with the main light turned off, but the fairy light still on. I was just sitting in bed watching Berlin on Netflix when I decided to take a screenshot for making a meme. I wanted to check the screenshot when I accidentally opened the EMF detector on my phone instead of the photos folder. Now I have the EMF detector installed directly because I make RC places and usually deal with electronics a lot. I don't use it for ghost hunting or anything. I did used to get some ghost hunting a few years ago, but I stopped completely. Well, when I opened the EMF detector, it immediately spiked to halfway. Now, I've known the EMFs of that room, and they're usually pretty low, so having a high EMF was already ringing bells in my mind. I don't have anything magnetic in that room either, apart from my headphones, which I did try to debunk if it was due to my headphones, and it wasn't. Plus, the detector of my phone is so sensitive that it really needs to be extremely close to a magnetic field to detect it. Now, I did find the center of the anomaly to be about a foot above the armrest of my chair. That was the point where the EMF spiked to max, all the way to red. As I moved away from it, it started getting low, and the thing is it was still strong enough to have the detector stuck at 50% even when over 4 feet away from the center of the anomaly. It was as if it had a sphere of influence which ended at 5 feet, because it stayed up to about 50% 4 feet away but dropped to 0 after 5 feet. It stayed like that for about 3 to 5 minutes, after which, when I was contemplating on recording this phenomena, at which point I had my phone directly at the center of that anomaly, the reading dropped to 0. The anomaly just disappeared, and I was actually a bit scared at this point and decided to go to sleep in another room with my parents and my brother. I knocked on their door, but they were sound asleep, so no one opened it. Kinda decided to go back to my room and give it a chance. I had the detector app open, and right as I was about to open the door, the EMF spiked all the way to 80%. I brought the phone closer to the door, and I went to 90%, as if the anomaly was right behind the door. Didn't open it, just went back, knocked harder, to which my mom opened the door and I went in. The next morning, today morning. Some might even say this morning. Took a reading again of the whole house, and there was nothing. As a matter of fact, in the room where we pray and stuff, my family's quite religious, the EMF was down to 0.00. The rest of the house had the normal ambient EMFs. So was it some random magnetic anomaly that I kind of came across, or did I actually come across the presence of another kind? Please let me know what you think. Pulled to safety. had a lot of paranormal experiences, but the first one I had, I didn't even think it was until years later. But I knew something strange had happened to me, like a guardian angel cheating death. It was back in the 90s. I was 8 or so. My grandparents and man lived like around the corner from each other, and I was between the two. I was getting ready to go for a visit. It was such a lovely day outside, like perfect weather, and now looking back on it, it was extremely quiet. Can't explain the pull of what I felt, but as I came out of the house, I had the biggest urge to step onto the front garden. Literally felt like I needed to go to the fence. It wasn't a dangerous or evil feeling, it was actually so peaceful. I stepped into the garden in a bit of a trance-like calmness, and I stood in the fence. I just enjoyed the moment in silence. Moments later, there's a horrific screech that cuts through everything. A car comes hurtling down the road and crashes straight into the corner of the wall of the street. It demolished where I would have been walking. I don't know what happened to the person driving. I think they were all right, though, but it was just the wall and would have been me. Quite rightly, my granddad comes screaming my name out of the house in a blind panic, and just remembered being so calm and turning to him. "I'm all right, Granddad." I think I was stunned, but I was so calm. I'd have died if it hadn't been that pull. I knew no one had died at the time, and any family that was passed, I never knew them either. Was it a ghost, angel, or just intuition? After this, though, it was like an awakening, because the more sensitive, and I've seen many things and sightings and felt things. Nothing as calm as that was, though. I'll always carry that. The Lady on the Train Tracks. My first ghostly encounter was only a moment, and I had been alone. I'd taken it as just a flicker or a trick of the light. My friend and I were traveling on the buses between our houses, both looking out the window, enjoying the view, and honestly feeling a bit bored. Passed over a bridge just above some train tracks. For just a moment it took the bus to pass the bridge. I saw her, the white lady. She was see-through, like looking through mist. She had long gown on and either long white hair or a veil. She was just standing there in the night in the tracks facing ahead, and I don't remember anything about her features or anything specific. I assumed she was a bride, though, not really right at that moment. I just remember turning slowly to my friend, and she was doing the exact same thing. She was white as a sheet. I asked her, "You just saw that, didn't you?" "Yeah." Both shivered and looked back, and can't see the tracks unless you're on the bridge, so I let her tell me what she had seen, and it matched up. We were both stunned and thoroughly spooked. I imagined perhaps a jilted lover left on the altar. It was sad. I hope her spirit does find peace. The Silent Painter. So I was feeling a little bit ill and in bed at the time, and my bed back was then facing the door into the landing and on top of the stairs in my ex's room. It's a small space and it's kind of creepy at night, but the house wasn't haunted by anything, and even with the creepy cellar I felt comfortable there. But this was during an evening, and I asked my ex if he could get me a glass of water, so he goes downstairs to get one. It's been only a few moments, and I'm there waiting for the water, and I look to see him go into his room quickly. I only saw the back of his striped shirt and his dark hair, but the way he moved was eerily silent and direct. His head was more turned away from me, so I couldn't see his face, and I was like, "Hey, what are you off to in your room for? Did you bring my water up?" Thinking he'd forgotten or something, but absolute silence. I asked again, calling his name once, and nothing. I was getting irritated, started calling for him. Called for him over and over, more agitated, like, "Why are you ignoring me?" Then my ex asks, "What's up?" as if he's coming up the stairs, and I go cold. I say, "You're not coming up those stairs." And his face appeared, and he got the water, and he says, "Yeah? I've just seen a ghost." I realize, and I say with a cold shiver. I tell him exactly what happened, and he looks at me a little all kind of awry, and I ask him what's wrong, and he said he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to spook me. but he felt like somebody was downstairs with him watching him and passed him to go upstairs. That's why it took longer. Also, I forgot he wasn't wearing a striped shirt. We were both shocked. We couldn't understand it. The only thing that had changed was, well, new to this house is that he brought some models home to paint for his friend because the guy who was painting them originally wasn't doing it anymore. I asked him to ask why. Turns out his friend doesn't know. He's not heard from him in ages, and in fact no one has. I asked what the guy looked like, and he said he was tall with dark hair. I tell my ex he's dead. He must have died and is basically coming to see his work, and he's done well. I told him to give his friend back the models. I didn't want them in the house, because until he died there was a really creepy presence in the house, and it felt like somebody was hovering over behind you, especially in my ex's room. It felt like somebody was in there where the models were. I had to shut his door during the day and mine at night. I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was being watched and I was creeped out. Then a while later the guy turns up at the model shop. He's alive and he really liked the painted models, and he's sad that he couldn't finish them. He's apparently very, very sick in the hospital. Didn't say why or how much, but seemed very sensitive about it. But I feel like it must have been extremely bad, like near death or possibly dying. Looked it up afterwards about living ghosts or out-of-body experiences, and I'll never forget that one. Encountered a ghost. This is about a scary encounter with what I believe to be a ghost. It's happened just about maybe 1 a.m. Still kind of in shock and recovering. I've always been very in tune with the spiritual world and recently talked about it with a friend who also believes in ghosts and other paranormal things. This weekend we went on a trip to Italy, and now we're on the way home. We are 4 people in the car. Not to get bored, we told each other scary stories. I stopped listening to the 2 in the front and started to look up stories under a subreddit to tell them. That's when suddenly I heard a hello. It sounded like it was from a distance, like pretty far behind us, and it was very clearly a female voice. It sounded like a confused woman, but also like she was scared or worried. I immediately got goosebumps and looked over to my friend to ask if she had said it because she slept the entire ride and woke up right then. The logical side wanted me to think that she said it to greet us. Turns out she did not say it. Panicked and asked loudly if anybody said hello just now. Nobody said it, nobody heard it either. Up to this point, I still had goosebumps all over my body, and I've never had them that long. I had this extremely uneasy feeling as if something was clinging on to us, or a spirit holding onto the car. I started crying, which I just randomly do, but that sensation felt so emotionally overwhelming. We then talked about the incident because I still didn't feel right. My heart beating fast, still feeling goosebumps. My friend who's driving said we just passed an ambulance in that moment. I told him we definitely passed by a dead person just now. And while talking, he asked me if I noticed the windshield wipers going off by themselves really fast and said, "No, I didn't pay attention." But that was also very creepy. A few minutes ago when I looked up our location on the map and saw we drove past the mortician and a graveyard. When we left that area, the goosebumps were gone and I quickly felt normal again, but it just doesn't sit right with me. I 100% believe that a ghost wanted to communicate with us that a dead woman's soul was roaming around the area. Something recorded me on my phone while I was asleep in bed. A few years ago, I was on vacation to Edisto Island, South Carolina with my Are there islands in South Carolina? Does SC stand for something other than South Carolina? Anyway, I was with my family, my mom, grandma, uncle, husband, and 2 of my young kids. On day 5, I noticed my storage was full on my phone, and I went to take beach pictures, and I checked and found a 23-minute long video. 23 minutes and 17 seconds to be exact, of me sleeping in the bed. After watching it a couple of times, I was scared to death. The video was taken super early in the morning, and my husband was sleeping in the twin bed beside me. 2 beds in our room. I was in one, him in the other bed, while my kids are both in the kitchen with my other family members mentioned above. In the video, you can hear the voices of all my family members in the distance kind of being loud, but you can tell they're in a different room. Video zooms in on my hair for a long time, and at the angle it had to be filming me. There's absolutely no way it could have been me recording. You could see me roll over and the whole bed moved when I do, yet the phone kept recording me and stayed completely still. It moved in a weird robotic way when it did move while recording, so steady that I don't see it could have even been a person recording it. It stayed on me for most of the video, and it continued to zoom in and out of my hair and then slowly turned to my husband laying on the other bed, showing him sleeping. So it definitely wasn't him recording me. Might be too much information, but I sleep in my underwear only, so I'm positive it was not any family member trying to play a trick. None of them would have recorded me naked, and hearing them in the other room ruled them out anyway. We were staying in a condo on the 2nd floor up. Our doors were locked, and it was a small room. I don't see how somebody could have gotten in, especially without kind of waking us. Plus, they would have had to have been standing above me with my phone. Ugh, freaks me out. And also hear me starting to wake up near the end of the video, saying my husband's name while I'm half asleep, telling him, "You know, we need to get up soon." Followed by, "I'm freezing." I thought so much on this. No way to explain it, and I don't really believe in ghosts enough to say that it could have been something like that, but I just can't explain it. It still gives me chills, and I can no longer sleep with my phone beside my bed since it happened, unless it's like a charger or something. I don't know why that seems to give me some peace of mind. I'll forever try to understand such an experience. Wrong timeline worries. This year I had some unexpected and awful things happen in my personal life, which changed a lot, including where I live and what I do for work. Difficult to cope with. I'm in therapy, and I even received more intensive mental health treatment. But even little things feel different. It's hard to explain, but everything seems wrong and off like they never have before. I'm praying for something like time travel to go back and reverse what happened. And I've had my fair share of people making fun of me for this before you get started, or being in a parallel universe that I can switch out of. It's more than just dealing with unfortunate things in life. What I went through is far from being the worst thing somebody's gone through. It's just this overwhelming feeling that things in my life aren't supposed to be this way. That something's off in a deep way, like I'm in the wrong timeline. I'm someone who's always been into things of the supernatural nature. I've had experiences with ghosts, etc., but my mind's never went to these types of things when going through difficulties in the past. Anybody ever dealt with feelings like this? What'd you do? Did they go away eventually? I don't know what I did. And I don't know if they went away. I already see too much, but this Shadow Man encounter felt insane. Since I was a kid, I've seen some really dark entities, but I often come back to this specific one that happened less than a year ago. I'd first moved to Portland from Minneapolis in November of 2022, and this instance happened late winter, early spring of 2023. At the time, I was living with my aunt, and it was around 1 a.m. in the morning. Everyone was in bed, and I was in the living room playing the new Hogwarts Legacy. All lights turned off except for the cast of the TV, when all of a sudden I get a violent chill up my spine, and every hair in my body stands straight up. Immediately break into a cold sweat, and I imagine this is what prey feel like when something's locked onto them. My eyes immediately go toward the dark kitchen hallway, and I see a long dark finger wrap around the corner, and my breath stops watching this happen in slow motion. I know what comes next, and I see the head pop around the corner shortly after, and I make out the hand. Staring into a completely black face of darkness, and I know it's staring straight at me. But as soon as it looks around the corner, it went back, not to be seen again. shaking at this point, but feeling like I was looking for someone specific and not finding them. Like I wasn't who they were hoping to encounter. I don't know, granted at this time I was living with people who unfortunately stayed within stagnant negative energy, and I cleansed myself as much as possible and tried not to engage in their constant bullshit. This isn't the first time I've seen shadow people, but this is the first time I've looked one in the face, and I absolutely do not recommend. My grandpa visited me in my dreams. Basically, lately I've been curious about my grandpa who died when I was 5 years old. 34 now. Been asking my grandma what kind of person he was. His traits, his personality, because I don't remember anything of him, unfortunately. Then I asked my mom some questions. I got some information about him. But they both mentioned that he was very happy and loved me very, very much. Sadly, I don't remember any of this. So after all these days and weeks passed, I've had a very vivid dream with him. And the dream goes like that. For some reason, I'm sitting with my grandma in their house, and she's telling me to go to their bedroom because my grandpa wants to see me. I said to her, "What the fuck are you talking about? Grandpa's dead." She replies to go and see him in the bed because he wants to talk to me. Then I proceed to go to the bedroom, and I see a figure like a wrapped mummy lying on the bed with the face of my grandpa, but with some of the blurry and looked slightly slimmer than in photos with a weird neck. Anyway, as long as I walk in the doors, the conversation starts. "Hey, so you've grown so much. You know I missed you, but don't worry about me, I'm doing alright." I didn't remember if I said something, and then he said, "Come here," so I went to him and lay over and hugged him. He repeated that he missed me, and his hug was very, very warm. I actually felt his presence in my dream, and the next moment I was awake feeling weird and happy at the same time. Creepy image on my turned-off TV. Around 45 minutes ago, I stopped a YouTube video I was watching on my PC to go pee. All of my family members were asleep, so I was quite as possible. I was texting my girlfriend while walking, and when I put my phone in my pocket and watched in front of me, I saw a big baby head on my TV that's near the bathroom. I didn't think much of it, yeah, it was creepy as hell, but it was just a black screen with the face of a baby watching me. So I just thought that my sister must have left the TV on with some strange video on it. Got a strange sister. I took the remote and turned off the TV. Instead of turning off, it turned on. It was on Disney+. I tried pushing it again, and the screen just went black and the TV turned off. That means that the face I was seeing wasn't a video since the TV was turned off. I've not drank anything in the last 2 weeks either, and I definitely haven't smoked. I never even smoked in my entire life, so it can't be that. I'm not that tired, so I don't think it could be a vision or something like that either. I haven't watched videos or films that had a face on them, and neither have I watched horror films in the last weeks. I honestly don't know what to think. Just 16 and telling this to my parents would make them kind of think that I'm stupid or that I use some kind of drug, or they would just laugh it off, but I know what's real and I know what isn't. And that was indeed real. Have I stepped foot in something big, or has my mind just made everything up? I don't know. But I hope to see you guys tomorrow. See ya. Does my dad need my help? My father passed away in his sleep almost 9 years ago. I was always sensitive to energies or spirits, whatever you refer to them as. So when my father passed away, I fully expected to be able to at least feel his spirit in one way or another. I've dealt with a lot of unexplained paranormal activity in my life, ranging from things moving, hearing voices, seeing figures, etc., which coincidentally stopped after my father passed. In the last 9 years, I've never once had any exchanges or experiences with my father besides in my dreams. When he first passed away, my dreams were always about him, asking for help. It would always be something stupid like him calling me in the yard to help with something in the yard, and one time he asked me for help fixing a bicycle. And one time I had a dream that he was in jail and was calling me asking him to bring him a sandwich because the food was terrible. In that dream, I drove a bike down a sort of back alleyway that led behind the jail. We sat on a picnic table eating sandwiches. When I told him I had to go, he said, "I know, Mama, just 5 more minutes." We just sat in silence. There have been other dreams that I can't really remember in detail right now, but in the beginning, he always needed help with something. Most recently, I had a dream that my father came home from jail. I don't know what's up with the jail, and my dad wasn't a criminal, I think. And I was showing him his grandson, and the time I asked him for help fixing things around the house, and he got annoyed and said, Yeah, I know, but I have to fix your tire first." And then I woke up to a completely flat tire. Why am I always dreaming that my father needs help? Think about it. See ya.